people don't realize that. That's the whole point. Like again, social media, you're looking at somebody else's final chapter.
Yes. Yeah.
Like when the podcast came out, right? You guys are probably like, I don't know, we're just going to start a podcast, right?
Yeah.
And you probably go back and watch your first episode and you guys look at it now, you're like, oh my God, we're like, can't believe how much we've grown or how much we've learned, right? Like that's the beauty of it, right? Like sucking at things is good because then you have something to compare it, or like you're learning something, I don't know if it's going to be successful. I just have a gut instinct that I'm supposed to help people, and I'm just following my gut. And I'm like, I feel like if I just do what's passionate for me and help people, it'll work itself out. That's just what I believe, and I just think that that's what people have to realize. Messy's okay. Sucking's okay. And failure is even okay because you learned a lesson. And if I look back at so many of my failures, those are the greatest things that ever happened for me. And but when I've lost something or something awful has happened in my life, it's been my greatest gift of lesson of what I have to give to other people, because I've already had to pull myself up.
Hello and welcome to the Disrupt the Everyday podcast. We're here to help you navigate life while disrupting the status quo. Our discussions cover a number of topics relevant to everyday life. We discuss everything from relationships to entrepreneurship. We also engage in some difficult but important conversations. And now, here are your hosts, Brian and Tanya Hamilton.
Welcome to another episode of the Disrupt the Everyday podcast. Today we're joined by Kristin Hutchison. Kristin, thanks for joining us today.
Thanks for having me. I'm excited to be here and talk to you guys.
Well, we're excited to have you on. Now, as we're apt to do, we're going to start off by learning a bit about you. So we'll ask you the loaded question: who is Kristin Hutchison?
Oof, tough question. No, seriously, it's an easy one. I think I wear a lot of hats, so it depends on how you know me. First and foremost, I'm a mom and a wife. I'm also a friend, a confidant, a cheerleader. As a bartender for 25 years, I've kind of listened to people's stories every day. So I get to kind of, I'm a passionate people person. And I think that if I could just kind of wave a magic wand to make everybody happy, I would love to do that, but that's not how it works. So I try to help people work through the tough stuff and understand that the messy is okay, and listen and speak up for themselves and find their inner voice. So that's Kristin, also known as Kristin being Kristin.
That's great. And it's sort of neat because, we've been following each other on Instagram, and I like what you post. I like what you talk about. And the thing that struck me to reach out was when you were talking about like pretty much just letting your yes be yes. Right. And I think, again, we were just talking about this before the show started, but, in society, I think a lot of people get maybe taken the wrong way when they advocate, when they stand up for themselves, when they say no, when people think they should say yes. And so I thought, you know what, this will be a good conversation to have with you. You seem to be the expert to enlighten all of us on how to, use our voice. And like I said, say yes when it's needed and no when it's needed as well.
Yeah, I agree with that. I think that's what's kind of hard about life. Think back when you're a kid. You're taught to sit in your chair and listen to your teacher, eat your green beans, finish your plate. So from a young age, we're kind of almost like, it's not that people do it to be bad, because you have to learn how to exist in society. You have to learn how to follow rules. That is true. But then sometimes in a little way, like if you have a strong-willed child or somebody that really has an inner gut, some people just know who they are from the time they're very little. And the traditional path isn't their thing, or maybe they like to ask questions, or maybe they're a curious kid, or maybe they have a lot of energy and they don't like to sit down. And so you're kind of not allowed to be who you want to be. So then as you kind of add that on to, like, by the time you're 18, 20, 30, you've gone through school, you've gone through college, sports, relationships. That's another way where we chip away at ourselves. We go, oh, I don't care, wherever you want to go, that's fine with me. Or I don't know what I want to eat, whatever you want to eat. So like, we just stop saying what we really want to say. And little by little, we kind of just chip away at ourselves. And I think that's why so many people, when they get older, they're kind of looking around and they're looking for self-help books, because they're trying to be like, who the hell am I? I don't even know I don't even know what I like, because I've been fit into all these different things. So my thing is, I'm just trying to help people realize that it's okay to say no. It's okay not to have a calendar full of things to do. It's okay to say, no, this is a day that we just want to stay home as a family. And I just think that there's a way of doing it that's polite. And sometimes maybe it won't be polite, and that's okay. You have to really, I think it's kind of funny that will say no to ourselves because we don't want to hurt somebody else's feelings. But then what do we do to ourselves? We kind of sometimes hurt ourselves. So that's why I'm really trying to open this dialogue and try to help people find that inner compass and listen to it.
Yeah, that's interesting. We say no to ourselves, but yeah, yes to other people at, how that could potentially affect us. That's interesting.
Yeah, I mean, I just think that you don't think about it. You're just thinking like, oh, everyone's going to this party. We should really go because we don't want to say no because it's not nice. But then, like, if you've had a really busy week at work and you're on empty, right, and you really just need a little time to regenerate, you'll sit there and go because you don't want to hurt their feelings. But then maybe it wasn't the right thing for your mental health that day. Maybe you really just needed a chill day on the couch. So, I mean, I think it's just listening to ourselves sometimes and being okay like that. It's okay to listen to yourself and support yourself with what you need.
And I think at 40 now, I'm finally starting to get this. And over the last couple of years, the other day, it was Canada Day here on July 1st. And I had these like great plans for the evening to go out with everybody, like with the family and stuff. Like you can't not do anything, right? And everybody at dinner was like, no, we just actually want to stay home. We will like watch fireworks in the backyard and this, that, and the next thing. And the old me would have been like, no, like we have to do something. Like we have to get out there and do something, right? And then the new me was like, okay, I'm actually totally fine with that. And there must be a reason why. We hadn't been home in quite some time and just a chance to settle. But it does take time for a person, especially a person like me with the personality of wanting to do and go, step back and be like, this will actually be better. So
that's a really good point, Tanya, because I think that's the thing. Sometimes you get it with age. And then sometimes once you start listening to it, I feel like it's like a muscle. It's kind of like when you go to the gym, you have to build up that muscle. It's the same thing with like listening to your gut or doing for yourself and realize that that's okay. Because sometimes your friends and family will be like, thank God, like we just want to relax too. And if everybody could just like, be honest with what they really want. And maybe there was something that your family needed that day. Maybe they needed a chill day. Or sometimes it's about listening to that inner gut. Maybe there was something that you shouldn't have gone that place that day. And when you actually honor your gut, it could have maybe prevented something from happening. You just never know because there's a reason our guts tell us something. And the more and more you listen to it, mine is almost like an alarm. Like I can't freaking ignore it. And like, I know like that, like I'll get the feeling like I know when I'm supposed to speak up. I know when I'm not supposed to go someplace and I think that just comes from years of just kind of like being allowed to be myself. My mom just kind of knew when I was little, like, you're not going to live with Kristin. If Kristin has an idea in her head, she's going to do it. So I was very lucky to have a mom that let me kind of like listen to that and develop my own skill sets. And I think that's another thing as a parent, it's really hard for us because we're trying to guide, we're trying to like nurture, right? And we know things that a kid doesn't know, but then it's sometimes hard to kind of like pull back and let them kind of like make their choices. And I think that if you give them a little bit of that when they're young, it kind of helps them get that little skill set going a little bit so that they can kind of be like, yeah, I don't really like this friend. Something about this friend doesn't really resonate. You know what I mean? Like it's kind of a skill set that you're kind of giving them like that inner, it's kind of like fear, right? Fear is like a thing that can either hold you back or propel you forward, but it's a really important skill set that you need because that's the thing that's going to say like, ding, 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 I shouldn't go to this place. You know what I mean? So I think that you have to kind of like learn to let that be part of their life a little bit. We can't protect them from everything. We have to kind of let them go through those experiences because that's what's going to help them as they become an adult to make certain choices they're going to make when you're not there to like guide them. So I think it's an interesting thing that I think that we don't spend enough time working on a little bit. If that makes any sense to you guys.
Yep.
I'll say for the record, I've always been fairly good at saying no.
He's great.
I'm
He's
a lot better at it now as well than when we first met. But one thing I wanted to kind of discuss with you is, it seems like a lot of what you're saying is very much speaking from experience. So can we unpack some of the areas in your life where you've either developed the ability to, let your no be no and your yes be yes, or has that always been really easy for you?
I think when you have that feeling, it's easy for you because you can kind of feel it. So you kind of know how to listen to it. And then if you have someone that allows you to kind of keep doing it, it gets easier and easier. I can remember having like a disagreement with my grandmother, my father's mother, and there was kind of a contentious relationship, and she tried to like pit me against my dad and like answer a question that I had to deal with my dad about something. And she was trying to like make me like, oh, you got to do what your mother says. And my mother would never do that. And I was kind of like, well, my mom wouldn't put me that in position because that's not the relationship we have. And even though I was a kid and you're supposed to respect your grandparent, when I left, my mom was like, I'm sorry, that was right. You know, and I was like, Mom, I'm not disrespectful, but when somebody crosses a boundary with me, I'm going to defend my boundary. Like I know what is right and what's wrong. So from having a good representation from my mom showing me how the right way to parent is and the right way to treat people, I knew what wasn't right. So that was probably one thing. So things like that were just really easy for me from a very young age. And then I think once you kind of get comfortable with speaking your truth or being yourself, it just becomes who you really are. And then people just, it's just so easy for me. So that's one thing. But I think another thing that from my life experiences as a parent, there's times that you have to sit there and be like, do you go along with everybody, or maybe you don't agree with something that your teacher is doing, or you have a different concept of who your child is. And sometimes it's not always easy to speak up. You know, these are people. Technically I'm a bartender. I have an associate's degree. I'm not an educator. I'm not a PhD, but my son had a lot of learning issues. And when he was younger, I would do a lot of research into the different things that he had. And in the meetings, I'd be at a table with 15 educators across from me, and it would just be me. And it was very intimidating, but I just knew as a parent that I had to advocate for my son. So that was another time that I had to really learn to kind of like be confident to speak my truth and fight for my child, because no one else is going to fight for your child like a parent. So I think those are the types of things throughout my life, just like standing up for myself at work or things like that. Like I've always been one, and sometimes there's a penalty for speaking up for yourself. But to me, I'm like, that's okay, because that wasn't the place for me to be. So that's how I kind of have to, you have to be willing to kind of sometimes lose a little bit, but that's okay, because if you lose, you win, I think.
Mm-hmm.
I don't know what you think about that, Brian.
No, there's definitely a side of that, you know, like when you are giving up something, there is going to be, there is a converse side of everything. Like you said, when you're saying yes to something, you're saying no to something else. I'm a firm believer in that as well. Mm-hmm. And then I guess as an adult, how is it? What are some of the other ways it's manifested for you? You seem like someone who would have no problem challenging authority. So am I kind of right in that assumption?
You picked that up pretty quickly. Yes. It's probably why I'm a bartender all these years. No, so I will say when I was in my early 20s, I did try corporate America, and I had a situation with a woman who harassed me. And I can remember I was only like 24 and she was probably like 35, 40. And so I called my mom and I'm like, Mom, this situation has happened with this coworker. I don't really know what I'm supposed to do. She's like, write it down, put it in your HR file. And I was in sales and I had a big commission check coming. So like, I wanted to wait till I got my commission check before I ruffled feathers. I'm a little bit smart when to like let it go. And so, so when I got my commission check, I went down to HR and I said, hey, I want to talk about a situation that happened on the job. And we had a big meeting about it. And then she had to apologize. And then we had a big training. This is like in the early 90s, because I'm in my 50s now. And we had a big training about harassment on the job and how to handle things with people. And then I got demoted. So that's when I say that you sometimes lose for speaking up. And you know what? I said, great. I can go get a job in a restaurant and probably make just as much money. And I started working in the service industry, and it really was like probably one of the greatest gifts for me, because then I became a bartender. And for something about that, I loved bartending because it's almost like entertaining. It's almost like hosting a podcast every night, because I meet so many different people and get all these amazing stories. And then the life lessons I've learned and the way that I can kind of share my voice with people and give little advice, tips to people. So it wound up being the best thing for me, because it's kind of like, it's perfect for the nonconformist, because you kind of like your own independent contractor. So that's what took me on that path of my job. Speaking up is what opened up a different door for me. So I think I say to people all the time, like, if you're not happy on your job, you don't have to be at that job. You can't just tell somebody to go screw themselves. And I always encourage people to try saying it in a professional way. Like, I think there's a way to kind of tell people to go, piss off without really saying it rudely. But I think
Yeah.
you need to be firm. And I think that's one of the things people don't learn how to set boundaries even in the workplace. Like if somebody is pushing you, like a bully's a bully. They're in school, they're in companies, they're everywhere. So I try to encourage people that you have to kind of say, I don't really like the way you spoke to me, or I don't know if you would say that to your mother, or would you say that to your daughter? And then a lot of times people will self-correct themselves. So sometimes I try to almost, there's a way that I just kind of handle people with a really like compassionate way. And they actually self-correct themselves sometimes just from the way I'm just direct and honest with people. And so that's another little trick in my adulthood that I've learned how to kind of master that a little bit too.
Mm-hmm. And I think out of all avenues, the workforce probably seems to be the most tricky in regards to addressing conflict or something that needs to be addressed, just because, well, one, people are worried they're going to lose their job or be demoted, right? And depending on where you are, if you're close to retirement or something like that, that's not really something you want to have to worry about. And I just, as you were saying that, so for the last 6 years, I've done my own gig, home daycare. So I haven't had any, coworkers or anything like that, parents and stuff. But for the most part, it's been fine. And now I'm in the schools as an EA. And it's funny, I was saying to a teacher the other day, I'm like, oh, if I was 20 and starting off in this job, I wouldn't stand up for myself, or like, I wouldn't ask, oh, when is it my break or anything. I would just stand there, right? But now, having a little bit more experience, street smarts and all that kind of stuff, I realize that like as I go into this new role, that I'm not going to have a problem saying something if something's not fair or whatever the case may be. And we were just saying this earlier, but age, I definitely think changes things, right? That's one factor.
You hope so anyways.
Yeah. And maybe experience too, life experiences, but any other factors in regards to being able to stand up for yourself? Like, what are other factors?
Yeah. So it's funny that you say about the job when you're younger, because I think that's what I love about the service industry. The service industry is tough. So I had to learn to really like set boundaries with people really easily, because managers can be really bullyish if you allow them to. And I would like really just stand up for myself all the time. So I think the service industry was a really great training program in general, because you're dealing with people that are just sometimes really nice or sometimes really nasty, even customers. So you really learn how to kind of like take all different types of things thrown at you and learn how to kind of like navigate through difficult people. So like I'm always the person that handles the difficult customer, because I can normally like ease them over and like win them over by the time they leave. But also as an adult, I would say 2021, my husband got sick and he got hospitalized. It was with COVID, and my sister's a nurse. And when he was in ICU, he was in a coma. And I can remember just feeling it was such a uncomfortable situation, because like when I walked into the hospital, it felt like I was back in the school system. As soon as I got there with all the doctors, it was like, you don't know anything. You're just a wife. And it's like, no, I know my husband. So maybe I'm just a wife and I'm not a doctor, but I know my husband. And I really think that one of the things I learned there, I almost went into like patient advocacy after this experience, because something that I learned, like your rights are gone as soon as you walk in. It's almost like I felt like my husband got put in jail without a trial, if that made any sense. Because once he was in the doors, I had no say. We had no say on anything. And I know that they were doing the best that they could to get him healthy and keep him alive. But there's certain things like, if you like a little bit of holistic healing, and medical and holistic don't coincide. So it was kind of like, I'm kind of fighting for certain things, and they're looking at me like I'm a crazy person. And, I just had my alarms were just like, ding, 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 like that alarm was just going off in my head. And there was so many times of like, I wound up being right about a couple things. And it's just because your gut is telling you something. And I was sitting there saying like, God, if some people weren't were too embarrassed or too afraid or too respectful to even ask questions, my situation could have been a completely different scenario. And so I'm glad that I'm the loudmouth, strong-willed person who challenges people, because I really truly believe that that's what got him out and alive. You know what I mean? Because like then we woke him up, and then once he woke up, I said, now take all the medicine out of him. And as we started taking the medicine out of him, he just started getting better and better, you know? And so he had a really quick recovery. And then I did a lot of holistic healing when we got home, because I just, again, followed that gut instinct, and he's doing amazing. So I just think that it's not always easy to ask questions, especially when someone has, 12 years of education, and you're in a white coat. You're like, that's a doctor. I'm not going to ask a doctor. I'm not going to ask a lawyer. I'm not going to ask a teacher, but I think that there's something to say that you're an expert on yourself, and you're an expert on your family. So just remember, nobody knows you like you know yourself. So if you're sitting in a meeting with a doctor and you're about to have a procedure, there's nothing wrong with asking, okay, can you explain this to me and that to me? Like, that's okay. That's you. Yeah. That's your body. If something goes wrong, the other one has to deal with it when it's over. Like if you're in a job and it's really not making you happy, you have bills to pay. That's great. Get an exit strategy. If you really have a toxic environment, like take the time and figure out how you're going to get out. You know what I mean? You don't have to stay someplace, because I think it'll just weigh on you eventually, internally, emotionally, and at home. So I really I like to encourage people, just kind of like speak up, ask questions, figure out what works for you. If something doesn't work, talk to your partner, say, hey, I'm really not happy at this job. And that's the thing I think that's great about having a good partner. You can be like, hey, I got to get out of this job. You'll be like, all right, I got you back. I'll do this, and we'll get a strategy to kind of do what's best for you. So lean on the people that you have, and the people that do allow you to kind of be strong. Let them help build you up while you're trying to work on those skill sets. But always ask. I feel like you got to ask questions. I'm just a curious person. That's probably my problem. I'm always like, why? Like why is always like, why? I don't understand. No is not a word in my vocabulary.
Oh man.
Have you happened to read the Malcolm Gladwell's book Blink?
No, but I love him. I'm gonna write that one down. Every time I go on a podcast, I have to write down like 4 books when I talk to people.
So one of the things he actually talks about in that book, like kind of the main premise, is how quick we make decisions. And we've been talking a lot about experience, and that made me think of it, because there's a specific portion where he makes reference to police officers, and how a lot of times they say, oh, I made this decision because of my gut. Well, really, when we were saying that, it's not necessarily that we just have this superpower. Maybe we do, but we have this superpower that just tells us what's going to happen. It's from experience. We see certain things, we recognize things, but our brain's processing it so quickly that we see all these cues. I'll use the example from my old work. I used to work security in a hospital, right? Like, again, I've seen some of these scenarios 100 times. I see somebody starting to, just by their behaviors, clenching the fists, I know, okay, this person's about to blow a gasket in a minute. I'm going to go over there and start talking to them now, so that doesn't happen, right? So again, I think it's your experience. Like you said, I'm not an expert in medicine, but I'm an expert in my family. Your husband, you've been together for a lot of years, so you recognize certain things that a doctor who, they're looking at a chart, they've known him for a couple of seconds, doesn't know.
Correct. Yeah, I'm going to read this. I'm going to definitely read this book, because I think that's what it is. Like you said, it's not really a superpower. It's just a skill set that you get. Like being in security, it's like being a bartender. You watch people, you start to really understand humans, right? So same thing at the bar. I can look at somebody, I can be like, ooh, this person's not having a good day. This person might need a little bit of compassion, or this person might need a conversation, So I think that's why I love being a bartender, is because I get to get my hands on people every day, and some people are there celebrating, and some people are there, kind of like drowning in sorrows. So it's kind of nice to be able to see like the different things, and people really will tell you their truth. They don't lie to a bartender. They might lie to their therapist, but they don't lie to me. So I really get to hear a lot of people's I think I really get to hear what a lot of people are struggling with. And, you hear a lot of people that they don't want to say what they do for work. Like, oh, I don't know, I do some stupid thing, blah, blah, blah. Like we just like totally throw away like what we do for a living. And I'm just like, well, your job is probably important. There's probably something you do. Like if you're a security person at a hospital, you're protecting people, like you're helping nurses maybe not have a difficult patient in their room in a few minutes that might just haul off and punch somebody in the face. There's something, we all are part of like the whole circle, right? Everybody plays a piece. So maybe you're just doing financials, but you know what? Maybe you let somebody retire early because they were working with you. So I think there's a little value to everything we do. Maybe we find it boring because that's what we do. But then like, again, you're discrediting who you are. I mean, you spend the majority of your time at your job. So like, if you don't like it, you might want to go, go get something else or do something on the side that gives you a little bit of that little passion. And that's what I just love to kind of encourage people too, because I think I saw one of the things you said something about your side hustles, another way to make extra money. You had that quote. And I think that's what's so great. I mean, we have to do a job because we have to pay our bills as adults, right? But then there's something about having a passion on the side. Like I'm always doing something on the side. Like a couple of years ago, I tried comedy for a little while, and then I did the podcast during COVID, and now like I want to figure out how to kind of help people just be themselves. So I'm kind of like now trying to learn how to start a business and t-shirts and stuff like that. So I just think that's what makes life interesting. You have so many options. And if you just listen to your gut and your gut says, hey, I want to try this, try it out. What's the big deal? If it doesn't work out, who cares? You tried it. You tried,
Yeah. And that's our mentality too. It's like, okay, yeah, you may have to invest some money, but nothing is like, we don't really believe in wasted time, right? Like when it comes to something like this, it's, you give it a go, you'll learn. At worst case scenario, it flops, but you've learned something from it, right? And maybe it doesn't last as long as person would think. Maybe it's not 5 years, maybe it's just 1 year, and then you shut that down and you go on to the next. But yeah, not wasted time, just
no.
productive.
And I mean, you guys have amazing guests too. Like, I mean, think of how much like this is like the lessons that you've probably gotten from so many of your guests, like the different conversations you've had. I mean, as parents, marriage. I mean, you guys, absolutely. I love podcasts that kind of hit a variety of topics because that's what I like. I feel like everyday people have a lot to share just as much as like celebrities or like business owners. And because I think about life, we're all living it every day, right? Yeah. We're all like raising children, going to work, trying to be happy. So, I mean, I think that's what's the secret sauce that people need to learn. Like, we always want perfection, especially with like social media. That's one of the biggest things that I'm trying to help people, like, stop looking at the social media. Like not everybody's telling you the truth. You know what I mean? Yeah. Like how many times do you see a celebrity and they're all like, oh my God, thank you for my flowers. And then the next day they're divorced. It's like, well, they must have been fighting before that. Were they not fighting? You know what I mean? We're also confused.
It's funny. I saw a meme the other day about, a mom telling their kids to like, pose for pictures, this, that, and the next thing. And then like the thoughts going through her head, like, oh, these kids are driving me nuts or whatever. And then the next day, the headline is, the sweetest things in my life, or they give me so much life and all that. And it's like, yeah, right. Just a second later. and like, we all go through those situations. Right. But again, I think it's, as we get older, realizing like, we can't let that trump what we really need. Even going back to the whole Canada Day thing, right? Like, sure, I'm sure everybody else, was doing something, but yeah, you can't let that trump for what it is that you need, right?
Yeah. So. And I think also one of the things I realized when I was doing so much content in during COVID, I started doing an Instagram live like 5 nights a week during the first lockdown. And I was kind of trying to keep people's minds off the news. And then I kept it down to 1 day a week when I started working. Then I did the podcast and I was doing so much content. And, it's exhausting, especially when you have a job and a family, making a podcast and putting out content. It's a lot. And when my husband got sick and he was in the hospital, I really looked at it and I was like, oh my God, like if this is the end, right? What was I doing the whole last year of his life? I was so focused on like the podcast, this, that, likes, right? And I was like, was I even present? So it really kind of, I don't know, I'm kind of like trying to approach things differently this time around. Like, I'm trying not to just post because you're supposed to post every day. Like,
Right.
I'm trying to post when I have something to say, or I'm trying not to worry so much if I posted, like, yesterday we were at a barbecue at my family's house. I don't think I took one picture yesterday. I'm trying to like be a little bit more
Yes.
present and not worry so much about posting everything, because times goes by quickly. And like, I think that there's so much pressure. And one of the things I realized with social is when I stopped posting, there was plenty of other people right behind me that everybody could keep paying attention to.
Yeah.
So like, I'm not as like, I'm not that important. I'm just like, I'm just some of the things. I have some followers, but it's like, so I think that's what you kind of have to, that goes back to, again, listening to yourself. So I really spent the last year, I kind of went into hermit mode a little bit, because I have to sometimes, process things. And I have to kind of be like, okay, what's speaking to me right now? What am I really trying to accomplish with content? What is my purpose? So, and I think it's okay to kind of take a break. And, a lot of people would be afraid to just walk away from everything and be like, oh, I have followers. What if they're not there? I'm like, then they weren't there for you. Like, it goes back to like, just not, you can't make people, care about you if they don't care about you. You can't make people like, follow you if they don't want to. Like, you just got to really just try to be good to yourself and try to do what speaks to you. And the people that are supposed to be in your life are going to be in your life. And the people that aren't, they won't stay around. Because if you have to sacrifice yourself to have somebody be your friend, or have somebody like, that it's not worth it to me. And I think that's goes back to like a little bit of integrity and just knowing who you are. I tried being an actress for a little while when I was really young, and I was like, ooh, this is some ugly people. I don't, it's not for me, So
Yeah.
I think you have to understand, like, there's a lot of pressure. And if you jump on a bandwagon, you might get some likes, but is it what you really want to be liked for?
Yeah, no, I'll agree with you. I kind of recently went into hermit mode on social media as well. And, going back to the Facebook thing, I can think of people that I personally know who their marriage, and just for the imagery, their marriage is basically, just imagine two people strangling each other, but just tight enough to maybe kill the other person in like 50 years. And then you see the post on social media about what a great spouse the other person is, right? I say that to say, do you feel like people just care too much, not even just necessarily on social media, but just in general, care too much about what other people think?
100%. And I think it's such a trap, right? Because I think that goes back to being a people pleaser, right? Tanya, like you were saying how like when you were younger, you would go because, everyone's supposed to be at this party. We should really go because it's the right thing to do. But then as you get older, you're like, well, what's the right thing to do? And I think once you do get married and have children, that really becomes your family, right? And your family that you grew up with, yes, they're always your family, but that's your extended family now, because really what it's about is like the four of you, the three of you. What do you guys? You have 4 kids, right? So 6.
Yeah.
Yes.
So I mean, that's a lot of people to please. Like that's a lot of personalities and likes and dislikes. So it's like it's trying to like be cautious of what they want, and that's a hard thing because we're taught to just go be a good brother, sister, son, wife, daughter, and so I think sometimes you feel like you're a bad person if you don't go to certain things, but your family has to matter a little bit too. And I saw this thing the other day. This couple was their parents were a blended family. Both parents were divorced with kids, and they didn't want to put pressure on the kids about the holidays, so they made like this special holiday called J Day. And it was a day that was not around any other holidays. And it was just a day that the whole family got together. And I said to my family, I'm like, that is such a cool idea. Because once you get married and everybody has kids, now it's like, which side of the house do you go to for the holidays, right? It's one of the biggest fights. That's why so many people don't want to deal with the holidays. And I think that's one of the biggest things where we go into this whole, like, what's the right thing to do, or listen to what you really want to do. Because, mothers and fathers and grandparents can give you so much heat if you don't want to come for like family, for that family holiday. Like, well, I got to see the grandkids. So it's challenging sometimes, finding the right balance,
Yeah, no, I can actually say for our personal experience, like my parents were divorced. And then when we got married, like, Christmas Day was a big thing for my mom, and it's my birthday too. So she always wanted to see me on Christmas Day. But I realized like really early on, like, I didn't cause anybody to get divorced. I'm not killing myself to try to get. I did it 1 year. I went to like 3 different events on Christmas Day. I was like, this is terrible. I'm never doing this again. And I don't care if people are upset. Right. So I think, if you can kind of back to that original point, if you can get around being too concerned about what other people think, like obviously there is some degree of that where it's important. Like I need to be somewhat concerned at least about what my wife thinks. But if you just learn not to care, it makes a lot of those things a lot easier.
Yeah, or just like I think it's like we put other people's expectations on ourselves. You know what I'm saying? Like, like we're pleased. Like goes back to that post that I made. You know, when you're saying yes, you know, to others, are you saying no to yourself? And it's just like there can be an easy way of saying it. Like, hey, listen, you know, I know Christmas. Like, you know, and my family's pretty good. Like my parents got divorced when I was a kid. My mom's remarried and she's a saint. My father comes to everything. He's a single guy, and like it makes our lives easier because it would be so hard on the holidays having to go to my mom's and then have to have him someplace different. You know what I mean? So it's really lovely that she can be so cool and have him at everything. It makes it a lot easier for us.
Oh, yeah.
And now the kids are getting older. So I said to my sister the other day, I'm like, your daughters are all at that age that they're going to be, and now it's boyfriends. And before you know it, they're going to get married. And like, that's going to change the dynamic. So we might have to make a J day and like, and let everybody just kind of do what they got to do on the holidays because, you know, you have to, I think families have to be a little bit more, try to be more compassionate with each other about that. Like understand that people have boundaries and like, I get that you want to be with your family today, whatever. And I think that that's the hardest things. I think sometimes some people are just like, they're not having it. They're just like, well, you have to be here, you know? So I think depending on your family, it makes it a little bit more difficult sometimes to kind of say yes to yourself, you know, but I don't know. I think it's an important dialogue to have. And I think it's an important thing for people to really, you know, think like, is this really what I want to do? Is this serving me? Do you know what I mean? Right. Because if it's not, then why are you knocking yourself out? You know, because I think at the same time, there's a lot of people that are selfish. You know, there's givers and takers. So if you're surrounded by a lot of like takers and you're a giver, you're going to be knocking yourself out, you know, and just constantly be like burning yourself out. And I think that's one thing that I learned as I was younger, because I was a really big giver. And I had to learn to get a little bit more selfish with my time. And I think that's why that post is so powerful for me, because that was a really big thing I had to decide one year. I was like, I have to be like, listen, I have to start saying no to others and start saying yes to myself, because it was a realization that I came into.
And I guess in regards to the whole family thing, now that I'm noticing it more this summer with our oldest being 14, then we have the twins that are 11 and our youngest, right? When you have little kids, they're just coming along for the ride, whether they have a choice or not, right? If it's a beach day, it's a beach day. If it's an amusement park, it's an amusement park. Now there's way more dialogue in regards to how we plan our vacations or what have you, right? And also looking at like, you know what? Yes, I get it's the parents who are paying and like we make the final choice. I get that. But I do think like I do think it is important for parents to also listen to what it is the kids need, what it is they enjoy as well. Because like if you have one child who's an introvert and then like the 3 are extroverts and want to be doing something 24/7, you have to keep that one child in mind as well. You don't want them you know, not wanting to be at these family vacations, because that's the last thing, right? But also just keeping everybody's needs and wants in mind as well. And that's something that I'm working on right now.
Yeah, you are. But yeah, even as a parent, you don't want to spend the money to have a terrible time because one person's not enjoying it, right?
Yeah. No, and that is hard when they get to that teenage years, because then like they want to be with their friends and you're still trying to do family things. And I think that's what's really hard, allowing them to like maybe go off with another friend. You know, sometimes when they get older, they go on a vacation with like their friend's family, and then you guys go without the older one. You're like, where is, you know? But it's challenging. It really is. It's like, it's checking our own emotions as we're going along in the process. You know what I mean? It's like, it's letting go of our own like wants and needs in a way, and allowing other people to have their. It's like it's kind of like a tennis match of like, you know, giving and taking, and it can be challenging sometimes, especially as parents. You know.
Yeah, it's definitely something, that we're going through. But I've really switched my view, I guess, on, okay, we don't need all 6 of us here for a weekend away to make it a family trip. If somebody, can do something else or not miss out on what they enjoy, then they can stay home and whoever else can go. And there's nothing wrong with that, right?
Mhm.
But it's also now giving our kids a chance to have the voice, what you're working with people, right? To feel comfortable saying what it is they want and all that kind of stuff. So it is definitely an interesting season that we're approaching, but something that I'm aware of. And
No, we're not approaching it.
we're here. We're in the thick of it.
But I think you just touched on a good topic though, Tanya, because like you said, like you're trying to allow them to like voice their opinions. And I think that's what people have come to realize. If you can allow your kids to have that trust, have a dialogue with you, right? And they can practice it at home. It's like one of the biggest things I think that really helps with children is scripting. I used to do it with my nieces when I used to babysit them all the time. If they had someone that was being a bully in school, I'm like, what did she say? I go, then what did you say? And I go, well, next time you say this, and you practice it. And then it's easier for them to like, just, like you were saying, back to the blank, it just comes off your tongue because you practice how to say it. So when you allow your kid to kind of have that dialogue at home, you're actually giving them that skill set to train them so that when they become a teenager or they're in a business, it's easier for them to kind of say, well, that doesn't really sit well with me. I really think I'd rather prefer to do it this way. So it's like, I think when we kind of practice it in an encouraging way, there are children that are strong-willed that just is it's a whole nother situation. But I think if you can kind of practice with them, kind of saying like, well, what do you think you'd like to do? Or why don't you want to do this? Or explain to me, and you give them that skill set, you're giving them like such a leg up in life, because you're hopefully helping like someone who's now trying to learn it at 30, 40, and 50. You know what I mean? I really feel like a lot of stuff that we're dealing with as we get older, it really roots back to our childhood. Like we weren't allowed to, children were seen, not heard. You know what I mean? Like there's so many things that go back to all the different parenting styles. So it's like, sometimes I'm just trying to take all these people and be like, okay, what happened? All right, let's erase all that. And let's start like rebuilding it. So that's kind of, I think it's great that you guys are allowing them to kind of like, and encourage them to like be able to speak that truth, because that's really important for them.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah, and I heard this quote last night while I was painting, actually, just repainting a room here, and I was listening. I don't even remember what I was listening to, but it was the one thing that stuck out to me while I was painting. The family you create is more important than the family you come from.
Ooh, that's powerful. No, that really is, because I think I think what we look at society, there are so many people that are hailing things that came from their previous, right? And a lot of people only do with what they know, right? And so you have the opportunity to have a clean slate, and you have the opportunity to do your own work and find the partner and work together as a team to build what you really want. And I think that's such a great way of explaining that. You're gonna have to send that to me. I want that one. I don't want to forget that one, and I'll butcher it if I try to say it again. But I love that. Yeah, that's beautiful. I love that.
That was really good. I'll find where I got that from. But yeah, okay. like kind of to your point, you don't have to drag all of anything that you didn't like about the family you came from.
Mm-hmm.
Why are you dragging that into your family that you're creating?
Mm-hmm. No, it's true. It's challenging. Like I just think that like and also communication, right? If you came from a family that didn't communicate, like this is something like every family has a different communication style. My mother was a very like she loved to just, okay, let's talk about it. Let's figure it all out. She was a single mom. She had 3 girls. She had to like, there was a lot of emotions in that house. She had to kind of like, talk about things. But then you might have a partner that nobody talked about anything in that house. And if you're an over communicator and you have an under communicator, you're just like, why isn't this person talking? So I think that sometimes, it's up to you as a partner to sometimes like try to help learn to kind of develop a communication style. And sometimes you have to help your partner. And then when you bring children into it, then it's up to you as parents to kind of say, okay, what type of communication style do we want in this home? And I think another thing that's really interesting is I think as parents, if you can kind of like share some of your own stories with your children, it gives them a better understanding of who you are as a parent. And I think that that's kind of like, if you can explain why you're teaching them something, I think makes kids be like, oh, okay, it's not just some pain in the ass telling me to clean my, you know what I mean, or to do certain things. They have an understanding of why, So I think that's one of the things I've always tried to do with my son. I try to say like, I do this because of that, or, I've always wanted you to kind of, and I think one of the things I love about my son is he is kind of his own person, and like when I pulled him out of school after 8th grade, we did it as a family discussion. Just the way he learned wasn't the traditional way of learning in Massachusetts. And it's just like, it wasn't fitting him. And it was a tough decision to decide to pull a kid out of school after 8th grade. But I asked him the other day, he's 20 now. I'm like, was that the right decision? He goes, best decision we ever made. And I was, again, talking about speaking up for yourself. I had to defend myself. Anytime I would meet somebody like, oh, what grade is he in?
Right.
Oh, we don't really go to high school. Well, what do you mean he doesn't go to high school? Like, what is he gonna do? And like, again, everyone's just on that path. Like everyone does the same thing. So when you take a left or right, they're so confused by why, what are you doing? And it almost like it makes them feel like they're doing the wrong thing, Right. So I think that's what's interesting too. So but I just listen to my gut. So again, I just like, this is what I think is the right thing to do.
Yep. Oh man, that's great. I'm just thinking what I wanted to touch on before we wrapped up, and we have touched on it a bit, but I'm thinking for a person that, may, contact you to work with you, right? They're thinking they want to become more comfortable with how they communicate with people, and they really just want to work on being their real, authentic self. I'm guessing there's not a 5-step, process to this, or maybe there might be, but what would be, and again, we've talked about some of the things, but what would be, the first few things that you would discuss with this person, in this process that they're about to embark on?
I'd probably start with, I'm trying to actually make a program. So I'm hoping by September,
okay.
I'm like in the process of doing a t-shirt. I have like a t-shirt brand I'm developing right now called Kind Rebel Clothing. So I'm trying to create a community and movement of being kind, but also being rebellious, because that's being your authentic self and using your voice. But I would think first I would try to ask people, like in a situation that made them uncomfortable and what they said. You know how like when someone says something to you and then you walk away and you're like, oh, I should have said this, or why didn't I say I didn't want to do that? Or, we always have that inner dialogue with ourselves. So I think I would probably start with like a situation like that with the person first and see like, what was the moment that you didn't feel like you were true to yourself? Or what was the moment that you did something that you didn't feel that you really wanted to do? Or what's really difficult for you to say, and then how I'm trying to build the program is I'm really trying to find a system that I can kind of use with like an interactive like course that can actually have like almost like challenges that people do. And then we can kind of go back and be like, okay, how did that feel? What did you notice? And then it's kind of like build up the skill sets. Cause it's just like, it's like a muscle, like anything else, like mindset's a muscle, like being more positive. What you speak is what you receive. Same thing with being authentic and tapping into your inner gut. It's really just being like, I really don't want to do this. And I'm just going to say no. Or I'm really feeling like this isn't like what I really am supposed to be doing. And I'm going to take a chance and totally change my career. Like that, I feel like everybody's an expert on themselves, but they're just not allowed to realize that. They go to these books and they go to these gurus and they go to their friends and they go to their family and they're asking all these different people what they should do. But it's like, but did you ask yourself? Did you ask yourself what you should do, and to sit down and like think about it for a couple of days and then see what your answer is? Because that's one of the things I've had to learn so much over the past couple of years when I've been doing all these. When I first was going to do comedy, my husband was like, what do you mean you're going to do comedy? You're like, are you going to write your own jokes? And I'm like, yes. And so, and I tried it for a little while and I loved it, but then when COVID came and I got the podcast, I realized I really love conversations. I really like more of the interaction with like one-on-ones is more, or group of people, like, and that's what I really decided I wanted to focus more on. But that's one of the things, like when you're building something and you tell people you're going to do something, they look at you, go, well, aren't there already a bunch of people that do that? Or like, well, how are you going to, there's so many naysayers, right? So I've had to learn, be like, you have to really be strong in like your conviction, like I'm going to do this and I don't care. I know it's going to be a lot of hard work. And I like the hard work because then like I learned so many lessons. Like I'm teaching myself everything as I go along. Like, okay, I got to figure out how to start a business. I got to figure out what paperwork I need to do. I need to figure out how I'm going to make a course. Like, and I like it because I've been on like this whole journey of like taking so many other courses, and then I've taken so many courses. I'm kind of like, that doesn't resonate with me. So it's actually made me even more like, oh, I got to just do it my way. So it's like, it's validated my thought. So that's why when I've tried to like learn the process, everyone has a system. And I'm like, but I don't like systems. So I'm like, that might not work for everyday people. Like if you're a mom, you're a mom of 4 kids. Okay, you have to get up and you have to meditate, and then you have to journal, and then you got to work out. I would be like, oh my God, I'm never going to succeed. I'm like, I'm already failing. You know what I mean? So for me, when that's what so many people are reading these systems, I feel like they're already feeling like they're so behind. So I want to just try to simplify things and be like, okay, well, who cares? Okay, that's not you. That system might not be for you. What is your system? Let's unlock your code. So that's what I'm trying to really help people do.
Oh, I love that. I think that's going to be very helpful for many people out there.
Hope so.
Yeah, well, one thing when people are trying to make change, the one thing that I've kind of followed, and I don't know if it's necessarily good for everyone, but just be prepared to suck at something until you don't.
Mm-hmm.
I love that.
Yeah,
Brian, that's a great point, because people don't realize that. That's the whole point. Like again, social media, you're looking at somebody else's final chapter.
Yes. Yeah.
Like when the podcast came out, right? You guys are probably like, I don't know, we're just going to start a podcast, right?
Yeah.
And you probably go back and watch your first episode, and you guys look at it now, you're like, oh my God, we're like, can't believe how much we've grown or how much we've learned, right? Like that's the beauty of it, right? Like sucking at things is good, because then you have something to compare it, or like you're learning something, you know? I don't know if it's going to be successful. I just have a gut instinct that I'm supposed to help people. And I'm just following my gut. And I'm like, I feel like if I just do what's passionate for me and help people, it'll work itself out. That's just what I believe, you know? And I just think that that's what people have to realize. Messy's okay. Sucking's okay. And failure is even okay, because you learned a lesson. And if I look back at so many of my failures, those are the greatest things that ever happened for me. And like, when I've lost something or something awful has happened in my life, it's been my greatest gift of lesson of what I have to give to other people, because I've already had to pull myself up, like whether like, you know, having a bad business investment when we were younger and losing everything. That was sucky, really sucky for a really long time. But I had to learn forgiveness. I had to learn like letting go. I had to learn like rebuild, you know? So all those little experiences in my life have really given me so much that it's like, I can understand so many different people's battles from different aspects, and kind of like, okay, well, that's fine. It sucked, but what are we going to do next? You know? And it's just enjoy. What was that book? Enjoy the Suck or something like that. There's something that's like some statements like enjoy the suck or whatever. So I don't know. So yeah. So.
Now, I'm curious, in your experience as a bartender, you talked a bit about the communication piece, learning how to interact with people more effectively. What's something that you find very valuable today that you learned from your bartending experience that you would have never learned if you had stayed in the corporate world?
I think you don't have anybody to complain to, you know? So in a situation in corporate America, right? Or corporation, you guys are in Canada, corporate Canada. So for instance, if you have like a shitty coworker, right? And you can go to a human resources department, and then there could be like a whole investigation, or like we have to have all these meetings, or like, I think as a bartender, if somebody calls me a bitch, I don't have anybody to go to complain about the fact that some guy sat down and called me a bitch, right? So I have to kind of be like, okay, all right, that hurt, or I have to figure out how to handle that person. So conflict resolution is one of the biggest things I think that you really get, and it's real, right? So I really feel like corporations would really benefit from like more conflict resolution. It's something that's like a long-term goal that I've loved to kind of bring in, and actually like allow people to be able to learn how to effectively communicate the negatives, because let's be honest, it's not always perfect. You're working in corporate, when you're working with coworkers, you're not going to all like each other. That's okay. You have a job to do. You have to work in a team and just get the process out. It doesn't really, you don't have to all love each other. You don't have to like think the same. You don't have to like all the same things. You just have to be respectful. That's it. Just don't be an asshole. That's really how
Yep.
simple it is. And so I think for bartending, it's been really learning how to handle people, all types of people. Um, and it's been learning how to take the hard stuff and just keep moving, because I have to go to the next customer with a good attitude, even if this person was difficult. I can't wear it on my face. So there's a toughness that comes to bartending that I love. And then there's so many. I'm actually would love to like write a little book about this, because I think there's so many skill sets that you get in the service industry that are so beneficial to life, even just regular relationships or business relationships, because you're a multitasker, you're a teamwork. Like the team, you actually become almost like family, because you're so dependent on the other person on your team to make the whole night run smoothly, you know, and you're there to help each other out. So there's a lot of skill sets that come in the service industry that I think that everybody should just do 2 weeks. I think everybody should do like 2 weeks or a month, and just kind of like, because I think they would have such a different like understanding when they go out to eat. But I think it would make them a little bit of a different coworker in any job that they do, you know?
Excellent. Now, one last question I have, and I'll give some context here as well. Is there anything that, because we've talked so much about marriage and relationships as well, when you and your husband got married, was there anything that you found surprising or that you had to adapt to that came from his family, and vice versa? So I'll give an example. One thing I found when we got married was that I discovered is Tanya washes the scissors every time they get used, which that was like growing up.
This up before
growing up, that was something I was not accustomed to. I don't know if we actually ever washed the scissors, and then, you know, syrup goes in the fridge. And then, you know, on my side, you know, there's there's different things. Like, I don't like when people squeeze toothpaste from the middle of the tube. It bothers me. I don't like when there's breadcrumbs in the butter. It bothers me. But
your clothes being folded inside out.
Yeah, my clothes being folded inside out because I don't put them on inside out. And when I used to get up at 5 o'clock to go to work, you know, I get to work and then using the washroom, I'm like, oh, my underwear have been on inside out all day. Right? So stuff like that. Yeah. But is there anything that you or your husband had to adapt to? Because again, those are kind of little things, but I've seen in marriages where little things will, you know, drive a wedge between people.
Oh boy, you and my husband must be best friends. I think you guys get along really well. No, I will say when I first started dating my husband, he lived in like a little apartment. And when I went over and saw his apartment, I'm like, he's gonna have a girlfriend. There's no way a bachelor lives in this place. You know what I mean? Like, I would literally check the closet to make sure there's no girl clothes. I mean, the place was immaculate. It was so cutely designed. Like, I was like, I mean, I used to he's so funny because he's a construction worker. He's such a masculine man, but he's like a really good decorator too. So I used to call him like Ricky Stewart, because like for like Martha Stewart. But he's the same way. Laundry, I drive him bananas. Like, he's really particular about his laundry. He's very neat. Everything's like got a place. And I'm kind of a little crazy, if you haven't picked up on this whole conversation, that I'm a little ADD. So I'm just kind of, I do everything at the same time. I'm like, whatever, everything's good the way it is. So, but I'm very laid back. So I just like learn like, if he comes home in a bad mood, I can already tell. I've known him. I've been with him for so long. I can already tell by the tone of voice or his look what type of day he's had. I just don't take it personal. I just stay out of his way till he calms down, and then he normally like level off. So I think that's funny. I think that you're always going to have little things that your partner drives you crazy about. We're very funny together. We're like almost like a comedy team, because like we're like we adore each other, but like the way we bicker, the way he rides me is so funny. He's probably the only person that can really talk a lot of shit to me. I'm always like, one man talks shit to me, he put a ring on it. But the thing is no, I think what it is though, you have to be honest with each other. And I think if you can't discuss it, that's the problem in a relationship. You know, you can't let it divide you guys. You just got to be like, okay, this is his personality, and just take it with stride. So that we're good about that. You know, I'm like, when I mess up the laundry now, I'm like, dude, hey, you've been with me 20 something years. Like, do you really think that the laundry's ever going to change? We're going to have this conversation probably forever.
Oh man.
Oh man. All right. Well, just as we wrap up, for anybody who's been listening to this conversation, that's been part of this conversation, that wants to follow up, keeping, you know, just see what you're doing on a day-to-day. I know you said you've been a bit of a social media hermit, but what are the best ways to contact you?
So I would say Instagram is where I'm the most active. So I'm there as Kristin V and Kirstin. ININ. A lot of people spell with an E. It's an I. I'm a 10, not a 10. So that's where it is. I think my website is KristinBeingKristin.com. That's just up and running. So like I'm trying to get more active and get everything going. And I'm really hoping to be having a lot more content out over the next couple of weeks and start getting back to putting out, really useful information and inspirational stuff. And then hopefully by September, I have my course done and I can actually start really I want to start working with people and really just trying to create a movement of, what is it? I don't know, real and authentic people. I think my program is going to be called Roar. So it's like,
I like it.
Rebel of authenticity and realness. So it's really just trying to let people understand that it's okay to speak up and it's okay to have your own thoughts and feelings. And you don't have to be hurtful, just be helpful. You know what I mean? So it's just kind of like agree to disagree. So it's okay to let people just kind of learn how to just speak up for themselves in a positive manner. Being a rebel doesn't have to be bad. So yeah, so you can be rebellious and also be nice about it. So it's a little bit of kindness and rebellion mixed together. So that's what I'm kind of be spreading. So we'll see how it works out.
There you go. I'm going to use that. You don't have to be hurtful, just be helpful in regards to, the kids and over the summer and their sibling bickerings and all that kind of stuff.
Yeah. I mean, it's like,
that's going to come out then.
You get what you get, you don't get upset. That's another one you can throw at them when they're talking.
Oh, and they know that one. Oh man. Well, it's been great meeting you on here. And thanks so much for being willing to come on and chat with us. It's definitely a good conversation and you're going to have a lot of good things to bring to the table. And it's, all the best for September.
Well, thank you so much, you guys. And thank you much for having me. And I love what you guys do. And I can't wait for more people. I am going to tell everybody about your podcast because I just love the conversations that you guys have. And I think it's important to open up dialogues for people because it helps them kind of, you never know what's going to touch with somebody. So that's what I love about podcasts like you guys, because you have such a variety of topics and you never know what somebody needs for a message of the day. So I appreciate what you guys do.
Thanks so much.
Thank you. Yeah, we appreciate you coming on. And for everybody who watched or listened, thank you for letting us disrupt your everyday.
Thanks for listening to the Disrupt the Everyday podcast. For more ways to listen, connect with us on social media. To be a guest or to partner with us, check out our link tree at Disrupt the Everyday. Join us next time for more ways to disrupt the everyday.